let's think
Yeah.
about that. So one, you got to have cash if you're going to own an Airbnb.
Right.
We're not being affected because I've done pretty well and I'm smart and I have a fair amount of money sitting on the side, so I can still pay my mortgages. So think about what you're saying. You're saying, let's go buy an Airbnb where a guy doesn't have it rented and he can't get it rented, right? Because of the virus we have going on. So
Yeah.
my answer to that is you can't go buy a property that you're not going to get it rented. Maybe at a certain price if you have enough money to hold on. But, look, if you're talking about, Airbnb or a vacation rental where I am, it's the first to get hit, okay? Because the people that are coming to rent your property right now and to come on vacation, that's a bonus in their life to go on vacation. That's something that they save for if they had money. They're going to not take that vacation this year. They're probably going to stay home and focus on their owner occupied and their kids of what they have going on in the immediate, the next year. So I am going to look at more Airbnbs, but then I got to decide whether do I want to have. Could you imagine if I had 20 units right now? That would probably be hurting me. So now I got to 7, and if you would have asked me 2 months ago, I'm going to own 50. I'm taking over Siesta Key Drive, or I own a block in Philly, and this is going so well that I want to own 10 more on the block. Well, guess what? More isn't better. Sometimes, like what I'm telling some people to do is maybe you don't need more. Concentrate on more what you own and what you have now, and maybe taking that extra money and paying down on that mortgage rather than going to another property. So maybe I could explain this a little bit better. So if you got 5 properties, instead of going buying another one or 2 and thinking you need to take over the world with real estate, maybe concentrate on that 5 and maybe just pay them down quicker. Could be an option, right? This is all about the options that we're going through.
Yeah.
So if you have an Airbnb in the city, who is going to go and rent that right now when someone just left that Airbnb home? They're nervous. I just wouldn't focus on that market right now. I just don't think it's a good idea unless you're stacked with cash and you believe that, look, it's going to, where are we going to be in 6 months? I don't have that answer. I'm just back to watching.
That's great.
Got it.
So one second. I'll give you one example. I have a very good friend that is in San Diego, California. Her and I are very close, very good friends. So she bought an $800,000 building 10 months ago for strictly Airbnb and Vrbo. So I talked to her about 3 months ago, and she was completely kicking butt, man. She's like, oh my gosh, Vrbo and Airbnb, it's the greatest thing that they've ever, that they've ever come up, the greatest business in the world. I put something on the internet and people come in Airbnb and Vrbo, they take care of the whole process and I'm making money. Well, I talked to her 3 weeks ago and she's completely vacant. And Airbnb and Vrbo won't even let you rent your properties right now. And she's got she has to pay an $8,000 mortgage. Not good. But let me make this one point to the investor that's caught in a situation like that. The advice I gave her is I asked her a question: how much equity do you have in that property before this started, right? Because we know it's going to drop. She had about $150,000, let's call it $150,000 in equity. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't really sure how she was going to continue to pay her bills. So what I said to her, as I said, why don't you look for somebody that wants to own an Airbnb in San Diego and sell off some of that $150,000 in equity? So sell that person $75,000 and maybe give them 25% of the deal. Leverage your stuff right now. If you can't make if you have tenants that aren't paying and you're going to struggle 4 months from now and pay your rental property mortgages, maybe bring in an investor that wants to be part of real estate right now and give up some of that equity, which we all have these egos. I'm not giving up equity. I'm not going to do that. Well, if you can get through this moment of time, which it is a moment of time, this will get better. It will be better. I'm not going to give you a time frame because I think it's going to linger for a while. But 2 years from now, if you just took one step back and you survived through this bad time of giving up equity, well, it's going to spring you forward for the next 8 years because you survived this downturn.
That's
I'm thinking.
nice. No, that's great thinking, because some people don't think that way. Like, some people might be like a little over leveraged, and have equity in some of those properties that they have, and now, like, you're giving kind of like an like ulterior idea for people.
Yeah, well, let's think about the person I was talking to. She's got $150,000 worth of equity. Her expenses are $10,000 a month. If I wrote her a check for $75,000 of her $150,000 in equity and she gives me 25%, she now has $75,000 to work for the next 8 to 9 months.
Yes.
Probably going to get her out of her problem. Who cares if she gave up 25%? Who cares? It doesn't.
It doesn't matter, because you're gonna find another deal, and you're still gonna, have more properties down the road.
Right. You're going to get through your problem, and then you're going to exceed, and then you got probably maybe another business partner. This happened to me. So if you go back 10 years ago, when I was at Temple, I had a bad partner. I did a lot, really not good things, and I thought I was going under 10 years ago. And I did have equity there. So what I did is I went to somebody, and I didn't want to give up my equity the first 2 or 3 months, but I was ruining my life. I was walking around my shore house when I had that house in Wildwood, and I remember the whole thing. I remember the year. It was the worst year of my life. I go, everything I worked for, I'm losing, until I came to my senses. And it kind of happened by accident, because he was one of my lenders, and he asked me to go to lunch to talk about more lending deals. He didn't know how much trouble I was in. And he goes, look, I just sold my company for X amount, and I have a couple $1 million. I want to fund all your deals. And I was like, well, would you like to be my partner? And he said yes. And he wrote me a check for $900,000. Wow. And he gave me a line of credit of like $600,000. And now today, God's honest truth, I just sold 7 of those properties over the past 2 months at extremely high numbers. If they're off my plate, they're off my plate. We did really well, but I look back at that time and I just said I was an immature investor. I didn't want to give equity. I didn't put my head between my legs and hurt my ego. And now we have the greatest partnership. And he's brought me about 30 investors since then. That probably makes up about $9 million. So wow. Sometimes
people don't think about those things.
Right. So when we get in trouble, we have to think about, poor me or sad. Look, it's okay to get upset and go through. The mind is an amazing tool, right? I mean, you can be happy, you can be sad. It controls your emotions, and you're all over the place. You just got to take a step back and say, what are some options I can do to get out of here at this moment of time that's going to get me a year from now where I'm going to prosper again? But even giving up equity, you're kind of prospering, right? You might be giving up something here, but it's going to get you through this. So it's kind of prospering if you're making the right decisions.